What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here, the quartering, and holy moly, it's actually happening.
You're fucking insane!
You didn't love me as much as I loved you!
Oh, God.
The reviews are in. Star Wars Rise of the Skywalker currently sits at a fully rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, a 56%. Now, people have been sending me the scores here and there, and there's been a few cases where it's up to 58, then now it's back down to 56, which would put it at the second worst Star Wars film of all time. Now, according to their scoring, they also include the Clone Wars at an 18%, which I don't know if I'd put it in there. I'm going to go like major films. Star Wars Episode 1 currently sits at a 53%. Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, 56%. There's a lot going on with this, but I want to just first go through a couple of the reviews, because what's interesting is when I first saw this, I thought, okay, really low Rotten Tomatoes score. I wonder, is it just a few reviews? It's not. It's at a 55% right now with 127 reviews in. It's not going to be easy for a few shills to swoop in and go ahead and affect that score. Now, if I'm going to look at something like The Last Jedi, by the way, The Last Jedi, in comparison, 91%. The Force Awakens, 93%. Now, if we look at The Last Jedi, there's a total official reviewers of 455. So we're at about, what, 25% of the total reviewers that reviewed the last film. Now, these are the professional reviewers. The Last Jedi, obviously, ended with a 43% audience score with 213 reviews, many of which we know Rotten Tomatoes didn't count. And given that Rotten Tomatoes has changed their scoring system, it's going to be curious. It's going to be interesting to watch. I mean, the how the audience score is. Now, normally, if the critics hate something, it's a good sign, in my opinion, especially the morons that work for Rotten Tomatoes for the most part. But some true non-shill reviewers have been coming in, like Jeremy Yan said it was the worst Star Wars movie that he'd seen. Normally, I would say, okay, well, if the critics don't like it, it's probably because there's too much quote-unquote fan service. One of the common complaints that was levied against Endgame, was that it was too much fan service, and a lot of critics didn't like that, you know, they took time out to basically give the fans what they wanted, and you know, that was a bad thing, apparently. But Endgame still reviewed on 496 total reviewers at a 94%. So there weren't enough whiners about fan service to really drag that score down. Now, with the new review system, though, if we look at the new barrier that Rotten Tomatoes has to user reviews, Endgame had just, quote-unquote, just 66,911 reviews. At least at the time, the biggest movie ever, and it had 66,000 reviews, compared to The Last Jedi, which was big, but not quite as big, had 213,520. Now, does that mean that a bunch of those reviewers probably didn't see the movie? Yeah, probably. But I think what goes with that is the unfair assumption that everybody who reviews a movie who didn't see it must be giving it a 0 out of 10. That's absolutely provably false. We know for a fact that, you know, there are positive shills as well. If we look at Metacritic, you know, or IMDb, these are sites that are not doing well either. Star Wars Episode 9, Rise of the Skywalker on Metacritic, 54%. Now, that's based on 42 critics, where Star Wars Rise of Skywalker is on 127. Now, here's the thing. Yes, let's say a 50% score does indicate not necessarily that it's just awful, but that the critics were mixed. So some critics may have given it a 10 out of 10. Other critics may have given it a 0 out of 10. And then you end up with a 50%. Now, when you go and see it, if it's because the film has fan service in it and they were hating on it, you're probably going to like it. Last night, though, as more and more reviews started coming out, J.J. Abrams' Party is Over started trending on Twitter, which I couldn't believe. I couldn't believe Disney didn't pick up the phone and call Jack Dorsey and say, hey, you got to kill this because this is bad. This will affect opening day, or opening week ticket sales. Now, because the Star Wars fandom is so aggressive about pre-buying opening day tickets, opening weekend tickets, I basically think their opening weekend is locked in. And as I've said, since Jump Street, the movie will still make $1 billion. I would be shocked to see it not make more money than the previous two in the trilogy. That said, I was shocked to see the critics actually pony up and give it a quote-unquote negative review. Now, if we look at some of the reviews, if we just look at, for example, Top Critics, which has an even lower overall score. We look at Adam Grant from Detroit News. Rise of Skywalker feels like a shrug of the shoulders and a march into the expected. Eric Cohn, IndieWire. Rise of the Skywalker operates as if its only cinematic tradition at its disposal hails from a galaxy far, far away. Jake Coyle. For the movie predicated on satisfying fans, The Rise of the Skywalker is distinctly unsatisfying conclusion, which had an imperfect but mostly a few good films. Talking about the recent trilogy. David Sims. Rise of the Skywalker is a fitting epitaph for the thrills and the limits of repetition. May it be the last episode of a saga that should have ended a long time ago. And then we finally see a positive one. The movie snaps together like a jigsaw puzzle, a series of concluding beats that seem inevitable and perfect, and designed to please all parties, so you don't dwell on the logic too much. 5 out of 5. Here's Glenn Weldon, NPR. A buildup of plot lines and characters that rolls towards its conclusion by dint of momentum lent to it by all that comes before. Basically saying it's done nothing new. How about Stephanie from Time Magazine? It's an anxiety not to offend. It's come off more like fan fiction than the creation of an actual professional filmmakers. A bot would have been able to pull off a more surprising movie. Whoa! AV Club. What's the point of introducing so many interesting new characters, then pushing them through the blueprint of an old adventure? USA Today. After paying homage to everything that came before, this Star Wars is a too safe landing of a massive pop culture starship and the spectacular finale that misses a chance to forge something special. Sam from Slate. Rather than making a movie some people might love, Abrams tried to make a movie that no one would hate. As a result, you don't feel much of anything at all. And that is a great encapsulation, honestly, of what modern day Star Wars has become. I mean, think about it. Look at the toy sales that we've talked about before. Yes, kids aren't buying toys as much as they used to, but adults who were kids in the 70s and 80s and 90s are buying toys. And the fact of the matter is, nobody cares about these characters. I mean, Kylo Ren has his fans, and so does Rey, of course, but go to the store and just see piles and piles and piles of Snoke and Rose Tico and Poe, Cameron Poe. I did it again. Forget his name all the time. John Boyega's character. These are forgettable characters that they haven't been able to establish any connection with the audience in almost 10 hours of cinema. Nobody cares. Look at what Marvel has done. Everybody cares about those characters. And what did Disney come in and do? They killed off everyone we cared about and didn't bother establishing any new emotional connection with the new characters. We look at New York Magazine. The Rise of Skywalker is another one of those zillion-dollar franchise films where I felt embarrassed for the actors, but pleased for them too, because the money is no doubt amazing and will presumably free them up to do things they care about. Essentially saying, at least they got paid, which is exactly what it feels like to be a Star Wars fan these days. Everyone around us is getting paid, and we're getting trash. We're getting low quality toys that aren't even posable. We're getting uninventive collectibles. We're getting characters we don't care about. We're getting a theme park that, rather than focus on the lore and the areas of the Star Wars universe that might drive people to go see them, decided to focus on this new Star Wars lore, which may be a long-term play, which may work out for Disney, but I'm not so sure it will, because again, nobody really cares about the current Star Wars lore. You could throw a stone and hit somebody that knows intricate details of the original trilogy or even the prequels. And it's difficult to find anyone who's invested in modern day Star Wars. And this is a huge yikes from me. A huge yikes. I don't understand. I don't normally toss the yikes out there as much as this, but whoa. I mean, this will absolutely affect long-tailed ticket sales, because people who are on the fence now are like, oh, confirmation bias, right? Oh, I thought it would suck, and look at that, it does. It's the worst ranked Star Wars movie in the modern era, significantly. Now, maybe there are some holdouts that would say, okay, maybe all the critics hated it because it's just super mega fan service, and that I'm going to go see it anyway, and it's going to be great. Maybe. But we do have the leaks. We do have all the leaks that tell us a lot of things that happen in the movie that I definitely would not consider fan service. Disney, what a way to limp across the finish line in a forgettable trilogy. It feels like I have more connection to the one-offs in the Star Wars saga than anything else. You know, if you look at the modern day Star Wars universe, it's continued to go downhill. You had Last Jedi at 91%, which, by the way, demolishes the whole it's good because it's divisive. Because Star Wars The Last Jedi was a very divisive film, but it still ended up with a respectable Rotten Tomatoes score at 91. But then you see Solo, a Star Wars story, a movie nobody wanted, 70%, which was indicative of Disney saying, yeah, we'll just throw Star Wars on it and everyone will go see it. They took our fandom for granted. You start off with Episode 7, The Force Awakens, 93. Then Rogue One, a Star Wars story, 83. 91, 7. They're just steadily marching towards absolute trash. I mean, even Revenge of the Sith, Attack of the Clones, and Episode 1, the prequels, are starting to look better by comparison. We're going to have to watch the media react and how, because they're not going to be able to blame bots because these are registered critics for Rotten Tomatoes. We'll have to wait and see. Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.
You're fucking insane!